Hi, I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where purpose-driven people like you learn how to craft and tell compelling stories to grow your revenue and amplify your impact. If you would like to clarify your story in under 30 minutes, visit me at businessofstory.com, because you gotta own your story to grow your brand.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
I've been toying with the creation of an online course for the business of story. Now, there seems to be a heck of a lot of interest out there for these kinds of things. In fact, Forbes reports that the e-learning market was valued over $165 billion in 2015 and is likely to grow at like over 5% between now and 2023 to a cool $240 billion. I mean, that's a lot. Now, I've included a link to their article in our show notes, which also features the top 10 platforms you can use if you're interested in hosting your own online course. So check it out in the show notes. This e-learning opportunity has been attracting online course gurus from everywhere, extolling the virtues of inspiring and educating students while making some big bucks in the process. But I got to be honest with you, I hear more horror stories than honor rolls coming out of e-learning. Marketing go-to guy Seth Godin on the Tim Ferriss Show said the e-course industry has a 97% failure rate. 97%. 9 out of 10 people I talked to about their online courses failed. And these are smart professionals with great content and the best of intentions. They spent weeks creating their courses, invested thousands of dollars, and ended up walking away from them due to lackluster results. So I've been as diligent as possible in trying to figure out if I should share Business of Story training online. I've outlined my course in 3 acts using the same proven 10 steps of the story cycle system that I've used in in-person consulting and workshops for the past decade. I've designed the course so you can use it for brand story strategy development, campaign creation, or leadership growth. You can even learn how to use the story cycle framework to advance your career. But I haven't pulled the trigger to actually build the dang thing. How about you? Are you wrestling with the same questions like, is there a market out there for me? What would people actually pay for the course? How do I best communicate my value proposition? How do I keep them accountable to themselves so they progress through the system to craft and tell compelling stories that actually sell? Remember that 97% failure rate number I mentioned earlier? How do we overcome that? How do I grow community around it? And is it worth the time and the energy? You tell me. Send me a note to park@businessofstory.com if you think me putting the Business of Story training course online is a good idea or not. If so, if I actually do it, you could be part of the pilot program, my pioneering cohort to proof the course. You'll provide invaluable insight for me as to what works and what can be improved. And I promise to you, in the process, I will help you clarify your story to grow your revenue and amplify your impact. Done, done, and done. But you got to let me know if you think it's worth it, if you think it's a good idea. Send me your thoughts to park@businessofstory.com. In the meantime, you and I are in luck because we have the founder and creator of one of the premier online e-learning platforms on today's show. Greg Smith of Thinkific joins us from Vancouver, Canada to teach us best practices around creating online courses that entertain, educate, and engage, and even make a little money when it's all said and done. On today's show, you and I will learn the power of a pilot course to hone your teaching content before your big launch. what to charge. We've even included a link in our show notes to an online course that teaches you how to price your online course. You'll also learn how to up your completion rate to 80 to 90% so that you and your students are going to have stellar success. The secret sauce of storytelling for cohort engagement, and the 6 can't-miss knowledge bombs to think about when you're creating your course. Plus a whole ton of extra credit coming from Greg on today's enlightening episode. I promise you won't be staring out the window waiting for recess to begin. So settle in, because class is now in session with Thinkific's Greg Smith. Greg, so great to have you here on Business of Story today.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
And now you're coming to us from the beautiful Pacific Northwest, or the Canadian Southwest, Vancouver, BC.
That's right. Yeah.
I love that town. You know, I grew up in Seattle, so I'm practically Canadian. My mom and dad took us camping all over the place up there. Fishing, hiking, just love your part of the world. And this is like the best time to visit up there between August, September, early October. I don't know if there's a more beautiful place in the world.
Yeah, I love it here. And we had a lot of forest fires this summer, so the last week the city was pretty smoky, but it's just cleared out. So now it's reminding me why I love summer here again.
That's what I heard. We've got a family place. My mom and dad built a place in Lake Chelan, which is south of like Okanagan region. So it's just on the east side of the Cascades in south of Canada, maybe, I don't even know if it's 100 miles, but my brothers and their families were over there using it a couple weeks ago, and they said, yeah, it was very smoky, and all of those fires, the smoke from those fires were coming down, washing over the state of Washington.
Yeah, it's crazy to look at some of the satellite images of all the smoke over, and we're hours and hours away from the nearest forest fires, but it just blanketed the city for a whole week.
Yeah. Now, did you grow up in Vancouver?
Pretty much. Been here since I was 6. Before that, I was born in Calgary and then lived in a little military base in southern Alberta. And then when I was 6, my parents moved out here to Vancouver and been here ever since, other than a few brief stints abroad, living in Europe and a couple other places.
Mm-hmm. And you are an attorney that turned into online, education designer.
Yeah, that's correct. I started out practicing law for one of the biggest law firms in Canada, doing securities and capital markets, so a lot of public market stuff, IPOs and mergers and acquisitions, things like that. And then loved that career, had a lot of fun with it, and then saw an opportunity to jump into doing my own thing, and that got me into the online education space. Well,
tell us about that. How did that go down? I mean, we all have those moments in our life, that moment when the universe shakes us, grabs us by the lapels and shakes us and says, Greg, you're not to be an attorney. You're actually supposed to be doing this. Take us through that.
Well, the course started actually before I got into law. I was just starting law school, and I started teaching people how to take the LSAT, and it was just initially a way to pay my way through law school. So I was teaching these classroom courses on the weekend, and I saw that every time I would either tutor someone or teach a class, that the first 4 or 5 hour conversation was always the same stuff. So I started putting together a blog, and just to cover off that initial thing. So I didn't have to have the same conversation over and over. So I put together a free blog of some articles just to put out there. And anytime someone asked for help on the LSAT, I'd say, just read my blog first, and then we can sit down and go through some things together and either do some tutoring or you can take a course of mine. And that led to me putting together an online course, because I had a lot of people checking out and reading the blog. And by a lot at that time, I mean hundreds. So not a hugely successful website, but I had a lot of people taking it and enjoying it and really positive feedback. So I put together a mini online course, and initially we called the project Mondays at 9, because it was my brother and I. We were roommates at the time. We both had pretty demanding careers. And so we said, Mondays at 9 p.m., we'll start work on this project. And we had a little bet going. We were going to put in a month of work part-time and launch a little mini online course. He'd build the technology, I'd build the course content. And the bet was, I thought we'd sell at least one copy in our first month, and he thought we'd sell nothing.
Well, so your bar was pretty low. I mean, really, way to shoot for the stars there, Greg.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind too, this is 10 years ago. So it's really, at least in my understanding at the time, it was before all these like $1 million product launches and things like that. So we never went for a big launch. We just put a link to it on the website saying, take my course. And then just went to a little PayPal checkout. And then if someone bought it, they would get access to the course. So, and we spent most of our time not on the marketing, but actually on making the course something that people would really get value out of. That was always my focus, and still is on the education side. So we put that out there, and yeah, first month we did 10 sales, so not one. I won the bet. We sold 10 copies at $29 each, and then it's only grown from there. And a few years later, it was doing the course on its own as a totally pretty passive business. Was doing more revenue than my legal career. My legal career was doing well. I was working for, like I said, largest law firm in the country, doing pretty serious corporate and securities law. But the course was actually doing more revenue. So that was a pretty big leading indicator to me that maybe there was something more to it. And then I started getting phone calls from other people saying, hey, you put this online, looks like it's going well. How did you do it? Can I use your software? And unfortunately, we hadn't built it in a way where we could share the software with anyone else. So that was really the turning point that led us to believe there was something here, not to create more courses for us, but for us to actually build the software in a way that anyone could go out there and share their course or their story really online and go and create that for other people, for them to go and market and sell and deliver great online courses. So we built up Thinkific as a way for people to do that easily.
So it really came out of necessity. Here you are teaching the LSAT course to make some extra money. I suppose you're not really thinking, I'm going to get rich on this, but it's going to get me some extra beer and pizza at the end of the day. You find that you're saying the same things over and over again, for the first 4 or 5 hours to get them in. So you go, let's do some pre-work. Let's get these people educated up before we get them in here so that you could be even more efficient, I suppose, in the training. That then leads you and your brother to creating this course. And was your brother the developer then? He's the one that created the software that enabled you to put your course online back in 1997?
Yes. Yeah. So he's the software developer. I tried, but after a few months of trying, he sort of said, Greg, I think you have to put the keyboard down and focus on teaching.
Smart. So, and then how long did you say before you got to the point that it was really throwing off enough cash that you said, I'm actually making more money an online course designer than a lawyer?
Well, I'd love to say that was sort of an overnight success, but it certainly wasn't. We launched the course in probably, I guess it was maybe 2005, and I didn't leave law until 2009. And it was a steady growth the whole time, but really it wasn't until around 2009. So I guess 4 years in between. But again, a year or two would go by in there where I did absolutely nothing for the course. So it was really kind of a part-time passion project, hobby on the side. I think if I were to try and repeat it now, I could get the whole thing done in a month or two where we'd actually have a successful, profitable online course that's doing quite well. But back then it was just a side project that I never really saw as growing into the business that it did. So that it definitely took a lot longer. And a lot of challenges along the way too. You're partly because there was no easy software to do it. A lot of challenges. I was lucky having a brother who's a software developer, so he could solve all those technical problems for me. But even so, it would take time, and that's really part of what led to Thinkific, because we thought there are other people out there like me who don't have a brother who's a software developer, and even if they do, they don't want to spend months or years trying to figure all that stuff out. So let's do something where they can figure out the tech side in a day and just get it launched and just focus on the teaching.
Every overnight success, by the way, takes years and years in the making. But that's pretty quick between 2005, 2009, especially if you had a couple of years where you just kind of put it on autopilot. What was your single greatest obstacle you had to overcome in that time to keep it living, breathing, and growing?
Well, the single biggest obstacle was my own, I guess, ego for perfection, and perfection in either content or course creation or marketing. I think early days creating the course, my brother would come home and I'd have a little video studio set up in the living room. All the couches are moved aside. I've got the fridge unplugged and things are melting onto the floor because I didn't like the background noise of the fridge humming in my video audio. And he would walk in on this and just laugh. And I'd show him a reel of outtakes because we lived near the water in Cole Harbour in Vancouver, and every once in a while a float plane would take off, and then I'd be 20 minutes into a clip, and all of a sudden you'd hear a float plane taking off, and I'd just start swearing at the camera. So we had some pretty funny outtakes and adventures there, and he gave me some good advice at the time and said, look, give yourself a deadline. End of the month, all the content for this thing is going to be done, and we're going to launch. No more obsessing and reshooting and getting everything perfect. And then once it's up and done it and people are taking it, then we'll ask for feedback from students and see what we need to fix and improve. And that was probably the best piece of advice I got in this whole process, was just kind of getting over myself and the perfectionist attitude on that and saying, let's get something out in people's hands. Because I could have spent a year perfecting my content and I would have put it out there and it never would have been perfect, and people would have given me a ton of feedback and I would have had to go and fix it anyway.
Perfection kills, doesn't it? It kills every dream. It kills every course. I imagine it's probably something that you guys come up against every day too, of just getting people like me off my butts and producing on your thing, on your platform, because we want it to be perfect.
Yeah, but like I said, it's a funny thing is that you literally could spend a year and dot every I, cross every T, and think you've got the most perfect product, and then you put it in the hands of customers. And I think this goes beyond courses and online education and everything, is once you get it in the hands of customers, they'll point out 100 things that you never even thought about, or they'll say, that's a good start, but really what I'm interested in learning is these other things. And you're thinking, oh, that's the course I should have built. So I find it's better just to get some sort of pilot project out, put it in people's hands, and then be really hands-on with those initial learners and say, is this what you were expecting? Is this helpful? What are your biggest questions? And that'll actually lead you to building the course that you should be building.
By the way, do you have any of those old outtakes still available? I would love to post one in the show notes of you unplugging your refrigerator and cussing at the seaplanes flying by.
Some of them are certainly probably not appropriate for
well, we can put beats in, right?
I'll see if I can find some. I know we have some that come years later of me shooting another course. I contracted with a group to shoot a course, and they wrote the script and I had to read it, and there was some pretty funny outtakes of me trying to read their script and not being very happy with the way it was written. And one of the guys here put together some outtakes of that, and that was pretty entertaining. I guess you could compare it if you've ever seen Winnebago Man.
No, I haven't. No.
Well, Winnebago Man was one of the original viral videos. It went viral on VHS, but it was this guy trying to shoot a promotional video for the Winnebago.
The sales guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was that bad, but he just loses it.
Well, let's do this. If you're up for it, send me those outtakes so I can post them, because I think it does underscore a really important concept in your world and my world of you don't have to be perfect. You got to get it out there if you're going to really move the world and train and educate the world. Start doing it, and by the way, you'll learn as much from your students as they learn from you. I learned that myself as a professor at Arizona State University, teaching storytelling in their School of Sustainability, and I had never done it before, Greg. And when I was very fortunate to be working with another professor who had written a number of courses, and he helped me through the process. But I got to tell you, I was that same perfectionist trying to get everything exactly right. Got them recorded. They're up online for our students. So it's a mixed bag in that I do online training, plus we do in-person training, in-person education with our executive master's students in the executive master's program. But I found that same thing, that, oh my goodness, that perfection just has a way. Actually, it really stops us from progress. It's a great way to procrastinate. If you're fearful of being perfect or not perfect, it's a wonderful fuel for procrastination, and that doesn't help anybody in your world or mine.
That's definitely true. The other interesting thing about the perfectionist side, especially in online courses, is we've done studies of perfect, well, I mean, you never get perfect, but the sort of near perfect or closer to perfect videos where there's no sort of stumbling and you're reading from a teleprompter and everything's just as it was scripted and you edit out all the mistakes, versus the ones where we stumble and fall and sort of even just correct ourselves, say, well, I didn't mean to say that. What I meant was this. Okay, let's keep going. Just like you would in a classroom. And the interesting thing is, with the less perfect videos, all the numbers are up, meaning you have more students signing up for the courses. If it was, say, a marketing video, you have more people finishing the courses or making it further through the courses. And that's one of the big challenges in online education, is even just getting people to finish it. But you get more people completing the course and more people evaluating it at a higher level. And I think it's because there's more of a human element, and they can connect with you, and they recognize that you're not perfect, and so they're not kind of expected to be, but they just identify a little bit more with you. So statistically, it's actually better to have a less than perfect, say, video or lesson in your course, because it'll help your students more.
That's really interesting. And as you were saying that, I did not know that. I was thinking, why would that be? And my hypothesis would be, we are all raised and brought up on TV and really beautifully produced Hollywood type TV network type stuff. So we figure if we're going to be online with our own videos and producing that kind of content, we have to look as good. We have to, strive for that kind of perfection in our production. But what you're saying is actually no. People are kind of fed up with that.
Exactly.
They want to see the person, the humanity behind the brains, basically.
Yeah, and that's why you see things like Facebook Live and YouTube Live exploding, and all of this live video online is. And I have a couple of friends who are big in the marketing space, and they were doing a lot of Facebook Lives just shot from their phone to their audience with great engagement. And then they thought, this is going well, let's hire a producer, video person, get a studio. And all of a sudden they took their production quality up 10 notches and did this most amazing Facebook Live series that it looked like it was professionally produced, because it pretty much was. And their engagement dropped. So they went back to shooting from the phone, and the engagement went back up.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, I love it. So you got your course, you built out. When did it become Thinkific? Was it always Thinkific, or is this when you really launched in 2009 to grow the company?
Well, so 2009 was when I left law and went more focused on my online course, which is actually Alpha Score, and that's my LSAT course. So that's my personal course, and that still runs. It actually runs on Thinkific, but it's just a client of Thinkific. Thinkific we didn't launch until 2012, so it's been around about 5 years now, and that was after having my own online course for a while, and a lot of other people calling and saying, hey, I've got a course in business, or a course on the GMAT, or I want to teach people how to fly drones, or we're a big company and we want to teach our clients how to use our software or our products. And getting all of those inbound calls is what led us to build Thinkific. So 2012 we created Thinkific, and that was then I basically gave up my online course. It still sits there, but it's fully passive now. I don't spend any time on it. And we've focused since 2012 100% on Thinkific, which is building out the platform that makes it easy for everyone else to go and launch their own online courses and grow their business through online education.
And how big is your company now in the numbers of people that you've got working there, and how many clients or how many courses do you have on Thinkific?
We're in terms of people on the team, we're just over 70, but we were 25 people a year ago, so we've been growing pretty rapidly lately, which is great. And then the client base, I think we've had around 80,000 people or businesses sign up for or try out Thinkific, but about 15,000 active businesses using Thinkific regularly.
Well, I really got to meet you folks at Social Media Marketing World earlier this year. Tyler and I just happened to be sitting next to each other in one of your courses, and he was kind enough to invite me on your podcast. So thank you for that. And we will have a link to that show in the show notes as well. What do you think, where is online training going? And the reason why I ask that is I know a lot of people that, very few of them say, I have a really successful course up and I'm just killing it. What I hear more often, Greg, is, oh my God, I spent so much time and effort getting my course up and I can't get any conversions, or the conversions I do get, I can't get people to hang around or to finish the course or to share the course with anyone. How do you help people get over that?
Really good questions, and definitely some problems that a lot of people need a little bit of help with solving. Just on the social media marketing world, meeting you, I saw your talk there and it was excellent. I think I've seen it 2 years now that I've been there, but different talks. But
and I'm coming back next year. They were so kind to invite me back, and now I have to really change it since you've seen it twice. I'm hoping you'll come and see it.
It's good content though. I really appreciate it. So
Thank you.
And I've used some of it in our business.
Great.
So But to your questions around, I guess there's a few things of getting people to sign up for your course is one thing. I spent a whole bunch of time on it. Then I couldn't necessarily get enough people to sign up, and then I couldn't really get them to engage. So there's sort of three separate problems. I'd say the first one around the spending time, I think we've kind of identified that is really the best thing to do is get a pilot course. Give yourself a deadline of, I'm going to put something out there in a week or a month. Get it in people's hands. Tell them it's a pilot. Be honest. Say, hey, this is my pilot course. I want to get your feedback. I'm going to be super hands-on. Normally, I'd expect to charge $600 for this program, but I'm going to give it to you for $400. You do still need to get them to pay for it if the plan is to be a business, because you want to validate that they're going to pay for it. Get a small number of people in and work really hands-on, and that's one of the benefits to them is you're going to do a lot of this stuff. You can even teach a lot of it live. So rather than going and pre-recording everything perfectly, you just do some live webinar type stuff where you teach for a bit and then you do a lot of Q&A and then you ask for feedback and then you take all those recordings and that becomes your pre-recorded online course that you have to launch afterwards, and then you can improve and iterate on that. But I would just get something out very, very quickly. Focus actually, even before building the perfect course, is figuring out what your topic is and then getting people in to join into that pilot program. And then, as I said, you can even teach it live. So they're really, if I could call 10 people today who were interested in learning from me next week, I could launch tomorrow my first or my next course, teach it live for a week or two, get a lot of feedback from the students, and then put that into a pre-recorded program and then iterate on that based on the feedback. So we shouldn't be taking months to get that great course up and running. And that way, if there's issues with conversion or engagement, you can address them right away. And it's not a total rewrite because you're still in the writing process of building your course as you go through it. That's kind of working through that first problem, and I think a good way to address it. The next one in terms of...
Wait, before we go on, because I love this, so let me just ask you a couple things there. So, for instance, I want to get my course, my Story Cycle course up and running. It's 10 steps, and I've been training this and teaching this a lot in person. I do it on my podcast for folks, and I take them through and I do one-on-one consults, and I know the 10 steps are a lot for someone to bite off in one fell swoop. So I'm going to break it up into 3 courses. The first course is like Act 1, is really understanding what your position is in the marketplace and so forth. And that literally takes them through the first 4 steps. So what you're saying that I could do or should do is I set up a webinar, invite 10, 20 people in it that I know want to take the course, do that for free, teach them the course through the webinar, record that, and I might use Zoom Room or a platform like that, get that video, and then help that shape my first pilot course that I would use and drop into the Thinkifik platform. So I'm just using that video from my webinar as my primary first pilot training video on Thinkific with my course, my Act 1 course there. Let that run then for another month or 2, get feedback on that, and then go in and do the tweaking?
Yeah, something like that. The few things I'd tweak on that model would be Zoom is great. Definitely you can do that. You can actually launch Zoom from inside Thinkific. So you could say take payment or enroll people in a Thinkific course, and all that's in there is a couple of Zoom events that are going to launch there, and then you store the recordings there after the fact. So they at least have one place to go that they feel, they've bought access to essentially a membership area or a course. And you can put in other resources and things in there. So you may have some things you refer to in that first Zoom recording and you say, look, I'll drop them into the online course inside Thinkific after the Zoom event. But the other change I would make is I would charge for it. Even though it's your first pilot, if the plan is to charge $1,000 for this down the road, say, look, you're going to be part of this pilot, we'll give you a discount on it, but still get people to pay, only because if your end goal is to charge people, and sometimes you can do free courses and that's the end goal, but if your end goal is to charge, you want to make sure that people are willing to pay for this. Because if you launch a pilot that's totally free and everything goes really, really well, and then you go to launch your paid program that's the same and suddenly no one will buy it, it's part of the problem could be you just never validated that anybody cared to pay for this topic.
I gotcha. Sure.
So I would still charge something for it. So people are probably listening to this who'd love to have the one-on-one session, but maybe couldn't afford to do that. But or they could, but they'd love to just hop in and do more of a group training, which you can do with the Zoom, and they essentially get a bit more access to you than they would in a pre-recorded online course, but not as much as a one-on-one session, but lots of Q&A. interaction. And then as you go through that, you get that feedback, and that'll help you build out the pre-recorded course. And you can take the recordings and then you can add more. If everyone says, that was great, really appreciated that talk, but I really wanted a bit more clarification on step 2 and how it interacts with, my business or my marketing plan, then you shoot another little session on that and add it in.
Perfect. Okay. And you can do all of that through Thinkific, through your platform.
Yeah. I mean, the live events, you do need something like Zoom, which is a great option for that. But the live events, you would launch through a live webinar platform, and then you could stick the recordings or even the events themselves inside Thinkific. Okay,
so you've got a setup. You've taken away excuse number 1. It's not perfect, and you're just saying, let's just do a pilot program. What's step number 2 then?
So on the getting people into it, part of that I think comes through doing this pilot and the iterative process of building it. Because what I do find is when people say I went and put a whole bunch of work into it and now I can't get someone to sign up, is they've kind of operated in a vacuum and not been working with clients and potential clients leading up to launching it. And so they go to launch and they're like, oh, now I have to figure out how to do marketing or how to do sales or how to get people in here. But if you build the sales and marketing right into the start, so as part of that pilot, you're reaching out to people to say, hey, would you be interested in this? And you can even start to build up your list of potential people. So if someone like yourself probably has an email list and people who come and listen to your podcast and all of this, so you have that benefit and you can leverage that. If someone else has no list yet, they at least have some connections through LinkedIn, through Facebook, through groups that they've joined where they can start to build up a list of people. And you can even offer a few resources, say through a mini free course on Thinkific, and use that to start to grow that list of people that you're going to talk to and reach out to when you actually want to release the full course or the pilot course. A good example of that is a friend of mine here at work, Catherine. We did a trip up to Whistler, which is where they had the Olympics in 2010. We did a company trip up to Whistler about a year ago, and everyone who came it was sort of a 24-hour challenge to come up with a new course topic, create your course, launch it, and get people enrolled in it. And Catherine, essentially, we didn't have really a winner, but if anyone would have won, it would have been her. And she started by hopping into a couple of Facebook groups that were related to her course topic and saying, hey, is anyone here interested in learning about this and help with this? I've gone through this experience. Anyone want some help with this? And a whole bunch of people said, yeah, that's great. And some of them even provided some feedback as to specifically what they wanted to learn. That was her first step. So now she already had a group of people and a place to put it when she launched the course. So then she went and spent some time building the course. She came back and she said, all right, I heard you guys yesterday. Here's my course. So she launched, and by the end of the weekend, she had 60 people signed up for it. And she had no list whatsoever, no, even prior business or course, anything. This was just straight out of the box because she put some of the marketing and sales first and said, well, where am I going to meet people who are interested in this? Where am I going to reach out to them? So I think it's important to start thinking about that right out of the gate.
And how much did she charge for that first course?
Not much. I don't remember the price, but it wasn't even in the hundreds of dollars. I think there was a free component. They got a bunch of people in, and then there was a small fee paid, but it wasn't significant. But it also was a course that took her an afternoon to build. So, it wasn't and I don't even think there was any video in it, which I would generally advise that you should have some kind of multimedia. You want to have audio and imagery, whether that's just you on video or voiceover slides. But point is, she charged very little for it because it only took her an afternoon to build. And I think the market she was going after as well probably wasn't quite, well, actually, she probably could have bumped the price up considerably. But I think, it being her first course launch, she does what a lot of people do and set the price quite low, which there's nothing wrong with that in getting started. Like I said, with my first online course, I started at $29. It now typically sells for $389. And I actually found the more I raise the price, the more people sign up for it because they really equate price with value.
Yeah, and how do you price that? I mean, do you folks at Thinkific give your prospects ideas about how to price it, or is it just a total gut feeling?
No, there's a bit of a science behind it. You know what I'll do? I've got a course on how to price your course.
Perfect.
So I'll just give that to your audience. There is a price on it, and it does cost, but we'll just give it for free to your audience, and I'll break my rules about pricing. So I'll make sure that we put that in the show notes, and we'll set up a link there that everyone can get access to that for free, and that will walk them through the pricing of a course. Because it's a bit more than we could do a whole series of podcast episodes on pricing it, and there's a lot of info in there. The gist of it is you're probably underpricing your product, but there's a bunch of different strategies of how you can think about that and what the best way to price your course is.
All right, so we've been through get off your butt and create a pilot and use that for some pre-marketing to get people interested in it, and you help your students or have your students help you iterate and create your own course. Then you get them into it. We'll go through pricing. We'll have a link. Thank you very much for that, by the way. So how do you keep them there, and how do you keep them interacting with your course so that they don't just get into like step 2 or 3 of my story cycle and say, okay, I'm busy, my brain's a little bit lazy, I got to go do something else? How do you keep them going?
This is the Achilles heel of the online course industry, I think, and it is the stuff that I live and breathe and absolutely love because it's a solvable problem. You're not going to solve it for absolutely every person. Some people, we all suffer from lack of motivation at times, and so there always is going to be some drop off, but you can make a massive difference. The average online course completion rate is between 7 and 14%. So about 1 in 10 people who sign up for a typical online course are going to finish it. That to me is atrocious. Some of the courses we've worked on and some of the ones on Thinkific, I've seen have completion rates of 80 or 90% of students getting all the way through the course.
Wow.
So you can definitely make a huge difference here, and there's very simple things you can do to make this difference. So I'm just going to hammer out a bunch of them if that's okay with you.
Perfect.
All right, here comes
Hammer
the knowledge bombs of my 10 years in the industry and reading a ton of case studies and even doing a lot of our own science and experimentation on this stuff, because we get to see millions of students going through thousands of courses. One is you do want some gamification built into your platform. So if you're using something like Thinkific, then you have some gamification built in. I don't mean games. I mean gamification the way LinkedIn and Facebook are gamified, in that you're getting little pats on the back that you might not even notice as you move through the course. So these are things like showing you what percentage complete you are, showing you what's coming up next, how many more lessons you have to do, those little rewards as you move along, marking things green and done and giving you a little check mark. Those little rewards work very much like they do in video games to make people essentially become addicted to the process of moving forward. So that's one thing. Another is keeping your actual lesson content to 2 to 7 minutes. So if you have a video or voiceover slides where you're delivering something, keep each one within 2 to 7 minutes. You get much longer than that, and the attention starts to wane, and people will drop off. Now, it doesn't mean you can't teach something that you would do in an hour in the classroom. It just means you're going to cut it up into those bite-sized pieces. Next one would be to insert formative assessments in between a lot of your content. So a formative assessment is just a fancy word for a quick quiz. And that's basically 1 or 2 multiple choice questions where you're just confirming that the person was awake. So if I'm asking you a formative assessment right now, I might say, which of the following is the best length for your online course lessons? A, 2 to 7 minutes, B, 30 to 60 minutes, or C, as long as possible. And hopefully, if we're all awake here, we would say A, 2 to 7 minutes. And it should be that easy. Were you paying attention? Did you get the gist of what I just said? And what this does is it reinforces the learning, and it also has that gamification and addiction element in that people are hopefully going to get 100% on each of these, and that makes them want to continue learning, and it actually makes them pay a little more closer attention for the next lesson because they know there's a quiz coming. So that works wonders in things. A few other things, as I mentioned, using multimedia, so having either voiceover slides or you on video, that makes a big difference, so as opposed to having everything in text. I know that's a relatively simple one, but it does make a huge difference. Let me
stop you there for just a second, because you said something that was in my mind. That's a relatively simple one, and you keep sort of apologizing for these, and I think we all do this, but it's an obstacle that we all have to overcome. It's that curse of the expert that sometimes I will think, and I will actually dig my own bear trap and fall into it when I think, well, that quiz is too dumb, it's too simple, it's too obvious that I'm going to actually piss off my students. In reality, you're not. What you're saying in these quick little quizzes to keep them awake is to give them that little mile marker of success and reinforce something you said, which may be so obvious and so basal to the teacher that we overlook it, and yet it can be so powerful to our audience. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, essentially, if you're making your point form bullet points of what you're going to teach in this lesson, and you have 3 bullet points you want to address in a 5-minute talk, it is a question about 1 or 2 or 3 of those bullet points. Just, were you there? Did you come? The only reason someone should be getting this wrong is if they fell asleep. And if they get it wrong, then it cues in their head, oh, I kind of dozed off and wasn't paying attention on that last video. And so they go back and they rewatch it until they get it, and then they get the question right, and then they move on. Because otherwise what happens is they kind of doze off, they're having a chat with their wife over breakfast while they're trying to watch this or listen to it, they're having their coffee, they're checking their email or looking at Twitter. And next thing you know, they're halfway through your course and they realize they haven't been paying attention. But at this point, it's too late and too daunting to go all the way back to the beginning and figure out where they actually dozed off. So they just quit. So much better to identify for them, hey, you fell asleep, go back and rewatch this after 4 minutes or 5 minutes or 7 minutes at worst, than it is to get halfway through a course and then say, you're clearly not getting this.
Brilliant. Okay, and so I'm sorry I cut you off. You had just been talking about video and multimedia, and totally get that. What's next on your list?
And I say easy around the multimedia as in just that easy as in it should be a no-brainer that doing a text course versus a video or voiceover slide course will be more engaging. It's not always that easy for people to produce video or voiceover slides. We do have a tool in Thinkific where you can just throw your slides in and then record voice over top of them, so that makes that part easy. And the video side, I don't obsess. Just grab your laptop, use the built-in camera, or there's a good cheap camera for about $100 that's the Logitech C920 that you can plug into your computer and record with that. Use a really simple microphone. I'm using a nice one here on this recording, but even the ATR 2100, Audio Technica 2100 is about $60, and it produces great quality audio, and then you can record that way. So it's some people find that kind of stuff daunting, but it really shouldn't be that difficult for people, and we can always help them with that with advice. Next one is 2 more interesting ones. One is actually having breakpoints in the course to make sure that people have caught up and are doing things. So if you have any stuff that people really need to be like a milestone they need to hit or something they need to go and do outside of their course. And I saw this done really well by a guy named Chandler Bolt, who teaches a course in self-publishing and publishing your first book. And what he would do is he'd hit a point in the course and say, okay, at this point, you need to have done your first draft. And if you haven't done your first draft, stop here. Don't watch the next video. Don't go on. Go away and get the draft done. Otherwise, everything else from this point forward is pointless. And he would hammer that home. And if you watch the next video at the start of it, he'd say, okay, you better have your first draft. Otherwise, stop here and go and do that. And what that does is and it doesn't have to be as big as a draft of a book. It could be something as simple of, have you written down your 5 potential heroes for your story, or what are the challenges they're going to overcome, or something like that. If you make them stop and do that before they move forward, then again, what it's doing is making sure they don't get so far into the course without engaging that they sort of realize you've lost them and give up. You're forcing them to kind of take stock and catch up at certain key milestones along the way before they move on. Because if they move on without catching up, you're going to lose them at some point in the future anyway. So there's no point in just trying to push them through to complete. You want to make sure they're actually getting done what they should be getting done.
Wow, good stuff. Okay.
One more big one there is accountability partners. If you can find a way to match up your students, we've got some tools for this too. If you can find a way to match up your students with someone else in the course who can they just have a 5-minute call once a week or once a day with to say, what'd you do yesterday on this? What are you doing tomorrow? Let's talk again tomorrow. Or what are you going to have done by tomorrow or by our next call? That accountability program makes a huge difference in people committing to finishing and getting value out of courses.
Boy, Greg, I've seen that in our own course at ASU and another course that I teach, Storytelling for Leaders. and that's Storytelling for Leaders in particular, is a full-day immersive course where it's in person, and then we do 23 weeks of assignments, simple little story assignments that each participant gets, and they are able to apply this right in their business. So it's not theory, but it's like, here's the next tip, and here's something that we want you to focus on this week, and do it, and find a story within your organization, craft it, share it with someone. And to try to get folks in the cohort to keep, sharing online of how things are going, we found it does not work unless you have that accountability partner. And it's not something that I had considered, but it was a great frustration for mine. And I asked the course designers, why can I not get anybody interacting, through our Basecamp group? And they said, have you set up accountability partners? And I go, nope. And they said, that's why.
Yeah, you can't be accountable to a group.
No, you really can't. And you can't be accountable to yourself, by the way. It's just none of us, we just don't do it. For the most part, discipline sounds great and we're good for a day or two, but we have so much on our plates, we're exhausted and our brains are lazy. And even though we say, okay, brain, we're going to educate you and learn some more, and it's like, yeah, okay, let's go, bring it. And then it's ready to, at least mine is to jump in the recliner, have a beer, and watch, football.
Yeah.
So I got to have someone there whipping me, saying, all right, dude, what's next?
Yeah, there's the odd superhuman out there who can do it. My wife's one of those. She just decides one day she's going to go and do the grouse grind, which is this huge hike in our neighborhood every single day, and then all of a sudden she's doing it. It's
up Grouse Mountain?
Yeah.
Yeah, you see, I'm practically Canadian. I established that early on.
Yeah. But I can't do that, and I'd say 99% of us can't.
No, I'm with you. Let me ask you, so someone gets a course up on Thinkific. How important is it, or does it just simply offer a whole nother opportunity for the entrepreneur to say, all right, now I've got you on Thinkific. Hey, this particular cohort, I'm also going to put together a special Facebook group just for you all, or I'm going to do that monthly check-in call that if any of you have questions about what you're learning from me on Thinkific, you can actually get me online to do that. So these are kind of those extenuating or expanding your crowd experience with your content. How do you go about that? What do you recommend in that area?
Yeah, that's a great one, and I think especially in the early days of your courses, and it can carry on into the long into the future of it, having more opportunity for engagement between you and the students, between the students and each other, a place to share stories and expertise is amazing. I mean, we have a kind of forum built into Thinkific where the students can interact with each other and the instructor. But the reality is, even though we have it there, I generally recommend people use a Facebook group like you identified, only because Facebook is still where people constantly hang out and get alerted. And so it's going to keep them coming back during the course, and then even long after the course is finished, you'll have alumni from the course who are coming back and sharing stories and success and advice with new people coming in. And to build that community over a few sort of generations of course takers can be a really amazing and powerful thing. And then plus you can jump in and participate there. But I actually find over time your participation becomes less and less necessary because you start to have these ambassadors and heroes who've come out the other end of your program and are saying, look, this is the success I've had. And they start to share even better advice than you are because they're living and breathing it.
Well, and I imagine, too, in that arena and that I've experienced in my own course with ASU, is that you do learn from the students, or something happens that's very timely, in my case around story or business storytelling, that you can jump on that group and bring tremendous added value that they're not getting in the course. The course, they're getting the foundations and the fundamentals to really help them. But that Facebook group, I would imagine, allows you to get in there and be very timely, or a question comes in that you hadn't considered so that you answer it for everybody in that group.
Yeah, and it I've just seen so many of those groups become quite powerful. You do have to moderate them and make sure that you don't get too many people in there who are there for the wrong reasons. But as long as you do that, you can create a great thing. And by having the private group, that works amazingly well.
Yeah. All right. So what am I missing? It sounds like there's a lot of steps in place. It's number one is take the fear out of it, stop procrastinating, and get a pilot up. Replace procrastination with a pilot. Number two is to get your students there to help you iterate and create this program so that you really know what is of interest to them, and they actually help you sort of market it as you then ultimately launch it. won't go through all the steps you gave us for interaction, but I have found that too in my own course. In storytelling, and I'd be curious, since you sat through 2 of my sessions at Social Media Marketing World, what were some of your takeaways from that session that you have applied, or at least it's informed some of your thinking around online education? I'm just curious. Now you can educate me on how that's working for you.
Yeah, I would say that one is that I would be careful. So there's 2 places where I've used it around courses. One is in the marketing and one is in the course content. I think that having it in the course content can be amazingly powerful. I was watching a course that a guy did on sales training recently online, and he had a story he was telling that literally brought tears to my eyes around teaching me how to sell better in a real sales environment. And it was because he was taking sales and making it a much more honest, ethical, and human interaction kind of experience. And he was telling this great story about interacting with someone in a sales experience and really helping them out and doing wonderful things for them. And I was literally tearing up watching and listening to this. And I'll never forget the sales lessons that came out of that because of that. So I think it can be a great tool if the story leads to true learning, but you do have to be careful not to throw stories in just for the sake of stories. If there's not a real reason, because especially in online education, you can get away with it more in the classroom, but in online education, people are here for a reason. They want to know how this course is going to make their life better or impact their life or change their life or their business. And you need to get to the point quickly and deliver that value and really strip away a lot of the extraneous stuff. So if the story is just a bunch of extraneous stories and details, not helpful. If it is a story that is really demonstrating and teaching the points that you want to make, that can be amazingly powerful for people paying attention and sticking around and engaging in it, and then even recommending the course for others.
And that's a really great advice on storytelling in general, is to know what your business point is before you find that story to amplify. Because you said something really important. It touched you emotionally. And if you can get someone to laugh or cry, in all of its authenticity, then that's like enormously powerful. That's what you're looking for. But you can't do it just to be gratuitous. There has to be a business point. And then you said something secondarily that was really, really important, is that it made you remember the points. And that's the thing about storytelling, is stories are extraordinarily memorable, providing you have a point and you're crystal clear on what the point of your story is and how it benefits your audience. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, it was definitely can be a pretty powerful tool in the learning side. And then on the marketing side as well, I think that's probably the stuff you know more about, definitely. But on the marketing side, I do find specific to courses is if you can in your and marketing, I just mean that even if you have a free course, I see clients of ours like Hootsuite who give away free courses in online courses to help people become better at social media. And even they have kind of a story that leads people to want to take this. You do have to convince people to give up their time and say, why am I going to go and spend time taking this course, and why am I going to take it from you as opposed to someone else, or just Googling some of these things. And so by making as close as you can get to that person, that potential customer, that avatar of yours, of making them kind of the hero and really identifying what their backstory is and what their challenges are and where they are in life now. And they're probably in the middle of this. I have challenges and I have difficulties, and I have potentially antagonists, whether those antagonists are people or they're, my desire to eat junk food. But if you can, in your marketing of your course, really identify with that and then show them what the future of the story is, where they're going to achieve what the journey is going to be like, which is to me the course, how they're going to achieve that victory, and what that maybe potential ritual in the future is going to be for them. Basically, how is their life going to be different after they take this journey to overcome some of their challenges in life. But essentially, the course becomes the story that you want the student to be the hero of. You're saying, you're the hero of this story. My course is the story, and you're going to dive in and take it, and it's going to become your story, and here's how it's going to end for you. Unlike, I guess, a good storybook or a movie where you don't want to give away the ending, I think in this scenario for education, you really want to give away the ending. This is what you're going to look like at the end here's the hero at the end of the story, and this could be you. I love it. No, it's fantastic. I'm writing notes very, very quickly because, that is the story cycle process, placing your hero at the center of the journey. And as you were talking about that, I was thinking, okay,
let's transfer that over to movie talk. So your audience is Luke Skywalker. Thinkific is your lightsaber. It's the tool that helps you go in and help them. And the Force is the knowledge and the inspiration you impart through your courses to empower and level up your students, essentially.
I love it.
There you have it.
We need to make a YouTube video about that. That'd be good.
That would be great. One last thing, a couple of things that I've found, and I'm curious if you've seen it in your work, again, through my online work at ASU and the comments that I get on my courses when, good, bad, and indifferent, is I try, at least from story, is to take every audience for every video I do through 3 acts. I do a setup, get them to understand where they are in the course and what's happening right now, and kind of give them a foreshadowing of here's what I want you to be getting out of this particular lesson, just like you talked about. So you're setting up the story. Then I take them into Act 2 of here's the challenge that I know you're up against, and you're fighting this, and you're overcoming that, and you're working hard, and here's where I know that we all have some pitfalls. And so here are some ways to get through it. Try this tool, use this technique, do this, let us know what works, what doesn't work, that sort of thing. And then in the end, you kind of reiterate, all right, you've gotten through this particular chapter of the journey. Here's what you should have taken away. And here's what I want you to do tomorrow with this knowledge. Apply it here, apply it there, and then let us know how that's working for you. So I kind of think about it in that 3-act structure, and I don't know if that ever comes into play in your course content or if you guys have thought about it, or if I'm just full of it and it doesn't really work that way. I don't know. I've never asked somebody that in your line of work.
I really like it. I'll be honest. I haven't done as much of that in my course content as I think we could have, but I'm going to start now that I'm thinking about it. I mean, the thing I really like about it in particular is that Act 1 that I think we miss quite often of sort of in some of the courses I see and even some of the ones I've created, I kind of operate under the assumption that when they hit lesson 1, they've signed up, they've paid for the course, they hit lesson 1, they know the title of the course. So now they know everything they need to know already about why they're taking the course, what they're going to learn, where they're going, and why they need to get there. And I'm just going to start teaching. So I kind of skip Act 1 and skip right to 2, and I don't think that's a good thing because that's going to impact their motivation to get through it. It's going to impact even their ability to kind of understand and take all of the building blocks I'm giving them and put them into a context. So I think I'm going to start adding the act system in. I'd love to kind of learn more about how you do that because I do think it would be really effective as opposed to what a lot of us do of just jumping in saying, okay, you signed up for my course on how to use, I'm just looking around. Oh, well, we'll just do mine. How to take the LSAT. Here's section 1 of the LSAT. Let me teach you how to do it, as opposed to, why you want to be taking this and what you're going to get out and where you're going and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think what we need to do, again, my experience, and I would love to test this on Thinkific with you, is you have to reinforce their decision. Look, you've made the decision to invest both time and money into this program, and I think, again, we as the curse of the experts is, all right, well, obviously you're interested, so let's just dive right into this stuff. But I think it's like any sales process is you have to reinforce in your student that they made the correct decision and give them a win in Act 1. Give them a win, man. Congratulations. You could do it, I guess, through social proof. Do you realize you are now among 10,000 smart entrepreneurs that have taken this course, so they don't feel like that they're alone in it. Number 2, it's also, I guess, reflected your dedication to your work. I can tell you it's not going to be easy. There are going to be times that you want to quit, but that's exactly why you want to do it, because this is what's going to level you up as a practitioner, so on and so forth. And you might even, level 3, say, here's what you are going to get out of this lesson. By the time you're done, you are already going to be at this level. So congratulations. Thank you for being here. This is what we're covering today, blah, 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 blah. And then you jump into Act 2. And here's why it's important. And, then you raise the stakes for them to further underscore why they're there, and then just start delivering the goods so that they can connect the wins in their own minds with what they're trying to achieve. First, I guess, philosophically, but then, to your point earlier, is get them to stop and write down what they should have learned at that point, or maybe, in my case, it might be that they write down what the number 1 position in the marketplace is. So at least they've got a starting point, and then you just start building on it from there. That's been my experience. Reinforce, raise the stakes, show them some wins, and then just give them unbelievable value in your content.
I like it. I'm gonna start pulling some of that stuff into the future content I'm creating.
The last thing, and again, I'm a newbie to this. This is just what I've learned with my online course at ASU. I can't wait to get my story cycle process up, and you and I need to talk about how to do that with Thinkific. Maybe we can make it a course and building a course in and of itself. But the last thing I would leave with, Greg, is the 3 words in storytelling that have helped me in every single aspect of storytelling, from brand marketing strategy to activation of campaigns to connecting with leaders. And it comes down to these 3 words in your communication, your content: urgency, novelty, and surprise. So if your content can be urgent in that you are helping someone evolve and transform out of their status quo into a more meaningful life that is often ignited by something that is happening to them, either in the marketplace, there's disruption going on. So they have urgency in your course, your brand, your story becomes, you become the go-to person to help them get that. Then when you get into training them, show them novel ways. Approach the training, because I would imagine that they already have some preconceptions on how you're going to go about delivering the content. So do that so they know that they're in the right place, but then give them some novelty, some interesting things in the use of video, in the use of how you're handling your slide deck, in the use of funny anecdotes, that sort of thing. And then I think surprise them. Surprise them in really 2 levels. Surprise them within your content through that novelty, but surprise them on how quickly that they can start leveling up by learning from you. And I think it does go back to what you're talking about that simplicity. Make it easy for them to see them progress throughout it. Now, I can tell you I don't do this all the time because I get lazy and I forget about it. But when I'm finding that my content isn't working or I'm not resonating with people, it's typically because I've, for some reason, have gotten away from that urgency, novelty, and surprise in the stories that I'm telling.
Yeah, that's great. And I like that, you're talking about novelty and surprise and delivering great value there, but good, I think, that we're also not saying that it has to be through, say, quality of production, which again I think can freeze people in the fear of producing that perfect product. I mean, I'd rather watch a grainy, lukewarm audio camera shot video of Elon Musk teaching me about Mars or SpaceX or electric cars than a perfectly produced thing in a nice studio from someone who doesn't have, or hasn't taken the time to really understand those things. So much more important, I think, to really surprise on the effort you've put into the knowledge that you're delivering and the value that you're delivering, as opposed to worrying so much about the perfect production quality.
Yeah. Well, Greg, thank you so much. Any parting words for our folks before we turn them loose?
Well, we'll make sure that we get stuff into the show notes, but I was also thinking we'll probably have to do a custom link just to make sure everyone's able to get that stuff. So I was thinking we could do get.thinkific.com/business of story. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll get that over to you and go in the show notes, and then but if anyone's just listening on their phone and they go to get.thinkific.com/business of story, we'll make sure we get the free pricing course there for you around pricing your courses. A couple other resources to get started if you're not at that point of pricing something, of course. And I'll put in a free month on Thinkific's business plan. So we do have a free plan, but I'll put in a free month on our higher level plan so that people can try out all the features and play around with it and get things built.
Oh, Greg, that's awesome. Very generous of you. Really, really appreciate it. And I can't wait to talk about this and explore my own program on your platform here, maybe when we hang up.
Excellent.
And I'd like to thank you all for listening to this edition of Business of Story. I love this because you see how much I got out of this? So it's really self-serving that I actually do this podcast. And I believe and I hope that you got just as much out of it as I did. And I hope that you'll come back next week too when we'll have another story artist. What I liked about this show, Greg, is it's the first time we really delved into the online learning world. And I know so many people are fighting with it and trying to figure out how to make it work for them, that you were really, really, really helpful in this. And if I can be of service to you, listeners, on your own story, visit me over at businessofstory.com. Of course, I've got tools and tips and techniques that are just waiting for you. And until next week, when we will have another marvelous story artist on like Greg, I want you to remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a good one. Thanks for listening.